Rachel Greszler is Senior Research Fellow in the Plymouth Institute for Free Enterprise at Advancing American Freedom. That's the Mike Pence operation. She joins me now. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Julia. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure to have you. I was so happy when those of you who chose to leave Heritage with concerns found a home at Advancing American Freedom.
Well, and it has truly felt like home. We have just been welcomed there, and we truly feel free to be advocating for those conservative principles which we've long stood for.
Indeed. And also that having just been stood up recently, that they had the capacity to absorb, 16 of you? Or so?
I think we're up to 18 and growing.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Almost doubled, I think more than doubled, actually, their size pretty quickly there.
And I know that couldn't have been easy. You were more than a decade at Heritage.
Yes, I had been there for over 12 years. So it was a difficult decision, and I have a lot of wonderful things to say about Heritage, but had just decided it was time to move on.
Totally understand. And you concern yourself with economic issues, so let's get into it. You have a memo.
I do. The memo is titled "Protectionism Serves the Swamp." And so one of the frustrating things that has been happening that is counter to free enterprise and free and fair competition that we know has helped America become the great nation it is having free trade. And so the tariffs that are out there, not only are they large in size, but they are also being selectively applied. And most damaging, I think, is just the uncertainty that has come with it. And with that uncertainty, you have all these businesses that are running to Washington with their lobbyists to try and get an exemption. And so we have been tracking those lobbying contracts on tariffs, and we saw that in the fourth quarter of last year, there was a nearly 500% increase in those lobbying contracts compared to the year before. And it's even worse if you go back to 2016. It's a nearly 1,600% increase in the number of these lobbying contracts and the amount of the money that's being spent on them. So it's a little ironic considering that, the first Trump administration campaigned on draining the swamp, and now we have this flood of swamp lobbyists attempting to get their special carve out from these harmful tariff taxes.
And I would say, and they get away with it because it's so obscure, right? It's hidden. It's not in front of everyone's face. But also, Rachel, I would say that it's money well spent because he has backed down on a lot of tariffs.
He has, and it is troubling because it's not clear. In the first administration, there actually was a process to submit an application for exemption, but now there is no process. It's opaque, and it's seemingly just subject to lobbying or personal connections. Popular opinion, yes, when the prices of things like coffee and beef go up, then we see, there's an exemption from them. Or auto parts, they start losing jobs, and now we have an exemption from the very thing that we thought we were trying to protect. Or when you see the lobbying and it's just behind the scenes things, just one example, Reyes Holdings Company gets an exemption for this resin that it uses in plastic bottles for Coca-Cola. Well, what's the economic emergency or the national security interest in plastic bottles? Mm-hmm. So it is very opaque and troubling to see that these exemptions are being given without justification.
Well, we were just having a conversation with Desmond Lockman from AEI about the trade deficit, right? Which what he was saying has become not sustainable, and it's a time bomb along with the federal deficit and a huge problem. And so, other issues with tariffs.
Yes, and to that I would say that the solution is more competition. And there are some great things that the Trump administration is doing on that front, certainly lowering taxes. The One Big Beautiful Bill that puts about $3,000 back into the average American family's pocketbook, the regulatory cuts that are helping businesses to be able to be more competitive, to expand. When we look at the manufacturing sector alone, there's an estimated regulatory burden of $29,000 per worker. So that's $29,000 that the manufacturers have to spend complying with all these excessive regulations that they can't translate into lower costs and that they can't translate into higher wages and higher benefits and more production for the workers. And so instead of trying to, handicap our opponents, we should be trying to elevate the U.S. companies. I'm sitting here and I was just watching one of my sons in a high school track meet, And the way that you get better is by competing against others who are better than you, instead of trying to knock them out of the competition entirely. And that's what's happening here, and not even on an equal basis.
Well, we were assured that these tariffs would bring back manufacturing to the United States on, just on a huge scale. But you note that there have been 72,000 manufacturing jobs lost.
There have, and so we've seen this decline since Liberation Day was announced. And in addition to the manufacturing jobs, 18,000 mining and logging jobs that were lost. And the reason that we're seeing these jobs being lost is because the tariffs are impacting the manufacturers. About half of the goods that are imported into the U.S. are actually used in the industrial production of things that we produce here in the U.S., or in the capital goods like the equipment and the machines, such as, the machines we use to make computer chips. All of these things are inputs into the process of U.S.-made goods. And so the manufacturers' costs have actually increased 50% more than other producers' costs since Liberation Day. The auto industry was one that President Trump has talked about trying to revive and to protect through these tariffs. And instead, auto sales are down 13% since Liberation Day, and 28,000 auto manufacturing jobs have been cut. So we're not seeing the results that were intended.
And meanwhile, we're waiting on that tariff ruling from the Supreme Court, but the administration has already indicated that even if those tariffs get struck down, they have like a backup plan to reimpose tariffs like through different mechanisms. So it feels like even if the Supreme Court shuts it down, it's not going away.
It's probably not going away. In the ruling itself, assuming that it is going to say that these are not legal under IEPA, that it's going to be a bit messy because we already have something like 1,000 companies that are lining up to get their rebates. But moving forward, yes, they will try to take other actions. I think that will be difficult because tariffs are a tax, and Congress has the taxing authority. And so it would be difficult to continue implementing these tariffs without Congress's approval. It's not to say they won't try, and that it won't take time and mess up production and cost more lost jobs and more taxes on American households and businesses. But I think end of the day is that we are going to see that Congress has to be the one that makes decisions on tariffs.
But already, as you know, $288.5 billion in tariffs already paid by Americans.
Yes, and so that comes out to about $2,200 per household that we are paying each year so far this year, and it can continue to go on if the tariffs are in effect. And that's, as I said, there are some good things that are happening. $3,000 tax cut is great, but when you lose $2,200 in value to higher tariff costs, that really eats away at it and is what I think is preventing the economy from growing as strong as it otherwise would be. Prior to Liberation Day announcement, we had 491,000 jobs added in the first month of 2025. In the 8 months, that was the first 4 months of 2025. In the 8 months since then, we've had only 93,000 jobs. It's about 12,000 per month since Liberation Day. And there's just this uncertainty that is really holding back the economy and the actual higher costs.
It feels that way. Rachel Greszler, Senior Research Fellow in the Plymouth Institute for Free Enterprise at Advancing American Freedom. Rachel, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And mine as well. Take care.